Okay, after going through my analytics, I found that people really enjoy and I get the most views on videos I make talking about Milsurp guns, their value, their current value, and the conditions going on right at this moment. Okay? So, before we get into it, if you would please subscribe, hit the like button, leave a comment, and if you could, become a member. And also, if you're not familiar with purchasing firearms on online auctions, like with proxy bid, live auction, there's a whole bunch of sites, and they do cover other auctions other than firearms. There's anything and anything, everything and anything. That's what I want to say. You know, construction equipment, furniture, art, coins, toys. But most of these sites, if you set up an account, it will send you alerts when firearm auctions or military auctions come up. Okay? If you need advice on that, okay, say something in the comments and I'll make a video. I may have to go on Rumble with it because I did one about the gun broker and I explained how to use the gun broker to purchase Milsurp guns, and YouTube took it down. Okay, because I guess I was saying prices and giving you examples of values of said pieces. Okay. Alright, so what do I want to say in this one? You guys are all interested in the way I mentioned that the economy is bad, okay? And yes, things here, the current situation going on now has created an environment that may or may not be advantageous. Because most people come up with the thing, oh, the high price of Milsurp guns, which is because they're not being brought in quantity anymore. You're getting them on what they call the secondary market. In other words, there isn't a gun shop or an online seller with hundreds of these coming in a shipment anymore. And that's why the prices, people that want certain pieces are paying more for it, and that's why the price is elevated. And they do get to ridiculous rates, okay? And all of us in the hobby are suffering from this. I've been collecting Milsurp guns for, I can say I'm a year or two shy, but 50 years, okay? And, I've seen it come and go, and what's going on now is a little bit different than it was, say, 20, 30 years ago. And yes, prices are high, okay? And this hobby is kind of dying out because these weapons are all getting up almost into the 100-year-old area, Some are, the World War II guns are 80 years old, so the supply of them is dwindling. And it's creating a problem. So a lot of people come up with two I can understand why they think it, but it isn't going to work that way. The first one was when all the baby boomers and older people like me croak and all these gun collections we have come up for sale, it's going to flood the market and drop the price. That is kind of a fantasy and a bit of prejudice against the elderly and shit and people who are financially stable in life, and it's not going to happen, and I explained why in other videos. The second one is if you see a firearm ridiculously priced, okay, you don't buy it, alright? That is sound advice, and but it doesn't work, okay? Because of somebody somewhere who has a little bit more financial backing than you and wants it, okay? It's kind of like when a guy was talking about New York City and the billionaires and the increase of the cost of living, and the one guy goes, well, you got to look at the middle class. People who are making $500K a year. All right. To me, where I live, in my environment, that is not the middle class. All right. So you have areas where people are more financially liquid than others, and if you're going on a nationwide auction site, you will find there are people that have deeper pockets and will pay more, and to them it's no big deal. So, what's going on and what I've seen? I do get emails from all these places, and I'm looking at all these auctions, and I've noticed something. The economy is getting worse more rapidly than I mentioned in the last video. They're talking there may be a damn depression, and things look really crappy on the horizon no matter what anyone tells you and all this other stuff. Prices are high, money's short, people do not have a disposable income, which generally is what you're spending on these items is your disposable income. I have two pieces here as an example. I get all these different auction listings, and when I'm bored, I go through them. Now, like I said, the first two premises of baby boomers and a certain class of people, are gone because of old age. And the other thing, well, if somebody wants a ridiculous price for something, that anybody with any sense ain't going to buy, the price will come down. Well, what's going on is kind of similar to that. What is happening is the value of these firearms have gone up over the years. And people have a tendency to hang on to them. Much like we have a Swedish Mauser up here, 1896, very popular gun, okay? These firearms go for about, say, 6 to 7 C notes on average. Some a little bit nicer than this, but that's what people pay for this particular type of firearm. Then we have down here the Mosin Nagant, which was famous for back 15, 20 years ago. For a C note, you can become a Milsurp collector. Now this is not a common gun. Okay, they made 37 million of them. Alright? But as soon as they stopped all the importations, the prices went crazy. Alright? I went to a gun show and found a World War II dated round receiver like that, and actually the gun was in worse shape than this. And I went to a gun show and someone had 1K on it. Okay, insane. So that's why a lot of people stop going to gun shows when you see crazy stuff like that and just whatever. And of course, the gun broker, I don't know if I mentioned that earlier, there are some really, really insane things on the gun broker, which are, unrealistic, to put it to you that way. So what am I seeing and what message am I trying to send out to you? Well, in auctions, usually, they have anywhere from 100 items, depending on the size of the company. I'm seeing a lot of smaller places. And one had about 100 items, 150 items, say. And there's a whole assortment of other firearms other than the Mosin Nagant. But the one curious thing I seen is this place had 7 Mosin Nagant M9130s out of 130 firearms listed there. 7 of them were Mosin Nagants. Now this is where you're getting this flooding. Say you go get set up at this auction, but the only thing is this auction, I never done business with the company, they got reserves. And the reserves were at about 2.5. Okay? So you're going to end up with shipping, handling fees and that. You're going to be paying 3.5 C notes, even if you get the minimum bids in. Okay, so, but there's a lot of them. And the thing is, if you just bid 2, and if everyone stopped at 2 and they didn't sell any, then that's your thing, don't pay the thing, and it'll drop. But you're seeing 7 examples of a gun, which hurts. Now, if there were 2 examples of a gun, your chances in that auction of, getting a little bit higher bid would be better, but not when you have 7 examples. That's kind of why I think they put reserves on there. Okay, you could lose, the person selling could lose, and it could be an advantage to you. Now, another auction house bigger, I'd say this auction, say, had 400 lots. It's a good size auction. It's not a huge one, but, and I've done business with them. They have a lot of activity, a lot of people like them, and I did win 1 or 2 pieces from them. Didn't get a bargain, but I kind of know they're somewhat fair. Going through their lots, the one thing I did notice was Swedish Mausers. And I'm looking and I kind of noticed, like that other one, 7 Nagants, I keep seeing 9130, 9130. And I did put a watch on all of them so I can have an update and give you the prices that they sold for. That auction, now these Swedish Mausers, like I said, they're up there, they're popular, and they do sell. Okay, people want them. This is a very desirable gun, and people are willing to shell out money for it. Okay, whether you agree with the price or not, that's about the going rate. 6.5 to 7 C notes. Well, I noticed they had 4 in their auction, which is kind of unusual. So now, when you're having an auction, you have a piece that is popular, people like it, but there are 4 of them, and this one does not have reserves on it. Most of these firearms now, and it's not going to end for another 15 days, so you really can't tell with the bid. This is a timed auction. At a certain point in time it stops, and whatever the bidding has been, they close, and you do have a 2-minute window to bid towards the end if you want to up your bid. But right now I haven't seen any of them really go for more than 3. Can't tell. I can't tell until the auction closes. But in an auction like that, you can be lucky. And then again, I don't know what exactly percentage they charge, what shipping and handling they charge, and other things. But for one pistol, I ended up, paying a C note on top of what I bid on. The bid was low. Okay. 1.8 C notes, but I ended up paying almost another C note because they did this crap. It's a handgun, so it's got to go 2-day overnight delivery or something. So the postage on it was outrageous, and then things like that. So you got to be careful. But what I'm trying to say is now you're seeing to where with 4 or 5 of these in the auction, they're not going to go high. Because, say you wanted one. Well, now you got 5 opportunities. And again, I can say on the Swedish Mausers, you rarely find one with a bad bore. Okay? From the pictures, if they look okay, and they're, generally you'd be safe taking a bid on one without really getting a Bowser. Where the Mosin Nagants, all that ammunition they brought in and was dirt cheap, was corrosive, and if they did not clean the gun out, you can have a screwed up bore, even though the outside of the Mosin looks mint. Okay, that's the only issue. But it looks like as the economy worsens, you're going to see, and I'm seeing these auction houses pop up with auctions more frequently. like instead of every couple months or 3 months, they're coming up every month with an auction. They may be smaller, but what's going on is people are dumping these guns mainly into auction houses, because the best way to get rid of numerous firearms, instead of like taking them to a gun show or something, would be to send a grouping of firearms to the auction house. And so you guys out there saying the market's going to be flooded, it looks like the market is starting to get flooded. And as the economy gets worse and as this year progresses, you will see more of this. Okay? My advice is keep yourself liquid, have a little pool there to spend, and I will keep you guys updated on what I'm seeing. But I mentioned that earlier about the prices coming down. Now I'm seeing to where you're gonna start seeing, it might not be immediate, but you're gonna see a price drop in the mill surplus world here once the economy gets worse. All right, thank you and stay tuned.